Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about Palantir quite literally trying to go to the moon. Now, yes, they're probably trying to get the stock price to go to the moon, but they're very clear that this is a long-term game and they're not in it for the short-term money. And yes, they would like the company to get a bunch of commercial clients and have that metric go to the moon because right now Wall Street hates them because 60% of the revenues are coming from the government. But Palantir is building a product that actually is also trying to go to the moon. And when I mean trying to go to the moon, I mean get into outer space and do some crazy outer space stuff. Today, we're going to talk about Palantir's Meta Constellation product. Now, this product has been out for a while, but they recently started about like the first week of January tweeting more stuff about it and sort of putting the information out there about it, or maybe the last week of December where they started like actively talking about what this product was and how this product could benefit organizations. And today, we're going to talk about it. We're going to react to a video that they put out. It's about a 3-minute video. We're going to get into some of the needs and weeds of the terminology that they're using because some of this stuff is very complex, but this stuff looks really cool. I mean, when you're talking about putting your money into a company that you want to invest in over the next 5-10 years, you're talking about a company that's trying to do some really, really elite stuff. The space market is going to be pretty big, and the electric vehicle markets are going to be pretty big. I've done a couple of videos over the past couple of days about their plans to dominate the electric vehicle market, and I'll leave those in the description. You can check those out. But space is another big market because SpaceX is going to go public eventually. That's Elon Musk's, baby, along with Tesla. And SpaceX is going to make the commercial space market a big industry. I wouldn't bet against Elon Musk being able to figure out how to execute that. Palantir can play a role through the data analysis and data synthesis and big data analytics software that they can provide for being able to go into space, along with the IoT stuff that they're doing, which is going to be really crucial that we're going to talk about. Then it could be pretty big. Let's get into my computer. So before we get into the video, we're going to hear a lot of the terminology around edge AI. And I want to break this down for myself and for people because I'm pretty sure like you've heard of it, but you probably don't know what it is exactly. So simply put, edge AI is a combination of edge computing and artificial intelligence. The algorithms are processed locally, either directly on the device or on the server near the device. The algorithms utilize the data generated by the devices themselves. Devices can make independent decisions in a matter of milliseconds without having to connect to the internet nor the cloud. Edge AI has almost no limits when it comes to potential use cases, and edge AI solutions and applications vary from smartwatches to production lines and from logistics to smart buildings and cities. So edge AI is basically combining cloud computing with artificial intelligence without having to rely on internet servers in order for the artificial intelligence algorithms to actually be able to do something. This also goes in line with IoT devices, which are Internet of Things devices, which is going to be a lot of the Meta Constellation stuff we talk about today, which have sensors on them, artificial intelligence sensors that are able to interpret what's going on in the world and then be able to react to them. So very simple example, if you're thinking about something like Tesla's full self-driving car, when you're in that car and the car is driving itself, it can't say, oh, the Wi-Fi's down, therefore we're going to crash. Like that's not going to happen, right? So because the car has to have sensors that are enabled with AI, they have to be edge AI sensors because those algorithms can't rely on the internet. They have to be cloud computing in and of themselves to be able to execute tasks through IoT devices, which would be like a full self-driving car, in order to get you to your destination, right? Because if that internet fails, if the algorithms fail in that moment, it's literally a question of life or death. That's why full self-driving is very controversial, and that's why a lot of technology needs to be built out in order for it to make sense. So a little bit more going on the article real quick. You can think of edge AI as analytics that takes place locally and it utilizes advanced analytics methods such as machine learning and AI, edge computing techniques such as machine vision, video analytics, sensor fusion, and requires the suitable hardware and electronics, which enables the edge computing. In addition, location intelligence methods are required to make edge AI happen, and that's sort of the idea of like geotagging things. Edge AI devices include smart speakers, smartphones, laptops, robots, self-driven cars, drones, and surveillance cameras that use video analytics. So all of this stuff is pretty necessary to be able to make this stuff actually happen. Let's take a look at this video now, and we'll get into their product.
Palantir's Meta Constellation software harnesses the power of growing satellite constellations, deploying AI into space to provide insights to decision makers here on Earth. Our Meta Constellation integrates with existing satellites, optimizing hundreds of orbital sensors and AI models, and allowing users to ask time-sensitive questions across the entire planet. Important questions like, where are there indicators of wildfires? Or, how are climate changes affecting crop productivity?
So here we're seeing a little bit of the use cases, right? So they're connecting their software and their sensors to existing satellites that already exist. These sensors are Internet of Things sensors. That means they're IoT enabled. And I did a whole video on IoT a while ago. I'll put that in the description so you can really understand what the Internet of Things is. But it's basically these devices that use these sensors that are able to communicate in real time with people trying to get data from those sensors. And here are some obvious use cases. Where are wildfires? right? Satellites in the sky, they can find wildfires. Boom, you have that data, you can take action. How is climate change affecting crop productivity? If we're having less production of corn, there may be something happening in regions where we produce a lot of corn that is going bad because of climate change, and these devices can help us better understand those questions.
And when and where are naval fleets conducting operations? Meta Constellation pushes Palantir's edge AI technology to a new frontier. As we all know, submarines present threats to the US and its allies. And to protect strategic interests, Allied forces need to track every submarine's deployment around the world. And at the forefront of this challenge are anti-submarine warfare officers. They turn to Meta Constellation to monitor ports across the Pacific. Let me show you a little bit about what that looks like. In response to Allied monitoring requests, Meta Constellation dynamically determines which orbiting sensors are available.
This is really interesting, right? This is why the music is so motivational behind it. Because, like, look at this thing. Like, this is their software. It's connected to these devices that are hundreds of thousands of miles into space, and it's giving you real-time data because they're IoT enabled and they're edge AI enabled, right? That's why it's really, really important to understand the concept of edge AI, especially in relationship to a lot of the stuff Palantir is working on. And it's giving users real insight about all these things that are happening in the world, which is, it's pretty phenomenal that they're able to do this.
Integrated through Palantir, the constellations then collaboratively schedule coverage over each port. Meanwhile, Apollo for Edge AI assigns tailored AI micromodels to each satellite. Running on board the satellite, the models will automatically find submarines and stream those insights directly to users. With the mission plan,
the software doesn't look that crazy, right? It's not like I think I could work my way around the software. That's the whole point of the software, to make it no code friendly, to make it friendly for someone who's not that technical. And it's like, wow, like this is what makes me excited to invest in this company. It's like, if this is the stuff you're doing, maybe it's not a big market in 2022, but in 2027, I mean, like, the possibilities are absolutely endless.
And Apollo automatically reconfigures each of the satellites, pushing the right micromodels into orbit. And as a software payload on board, Palantir's Edge AI platform connects complex satellite subsystems to models, integrating new AI with the hardware. The best part, my favorite part, is that as it orbits, the Edge AI platform hot swaps the right micromodels in, rapidly reconfiguring the satellite. The models process imagery, they detect submarines, geolocate them, and then determine any movement since the last collection pass.
What we're talking about here with micromodels is like, the whole idea of the software is to create simulations of what's happening using machine learning and AI. And with those simulations, they're able to adapt right on the spot, right? So if there's something happening in a certain region, like if you're trying to capture a submarine or trying to make sense of a wildfire, on the spot, those satellites are going to be able to change the way they're moving or integrating and providing geotag location-based imagery back to the software in order for the software to make more sense, right? Like if you need it to go a little bit to the right, that device will automatically know it needs to go a little bit more to the right if, like, it's tracking a submarine and the submarine is moving more to the right, right? Like, that device has to be smart enough, it has to be artificially intelligent enough to know what to do. And like, that's the interesting thing here, that it's actually able to do that right on its own.
All in under a second. When the AI sees a submarine movement, that insight is directly downlinked to Allied forces as the satellite passes overhead, and the anti-submarine warfare officers are notified in just minutes, empowering them to respond in a way that we've never seen before. As you can tell, we're really excited about Palantir's Meta Constellation and see it as the software that brings hundreds of satellites to bear on your hardest problems. Whether it's the anti-submarine warfare officer that I just described, using it to find submarines, or first responders leveraging AI to spot wildfire signs, Meta Constellation is there to empower users.
That motivational music starts to make sense when you look at this. So let's look at a couple quick things on their website, right? Meta Constellation brings hundreds of satellites to bear on your most complex problems. They integrate with a mesh of existing satellites. So if you're a company that is already working with certain satellites, you'll have that integration. They optimize hundreds of orbital, terrestrial, and aircraft sensors, and they enable users to ask time-sensitive questions across the entire planet. And that's the key here, right? So if a user can ask a question in a meaningful way and get an answer immediately, then you've got something really good to go. So we have some sensor integration. This is the IoT stuff we talked about, real-world insights, obviously getting raw data to produce insights, tailored algorithms. They're using particular machine learning methodologies to actually be able to get to the right insights. And then insights at the edge. Users never have to start with the raw sensor data. They start with algorithmic insights from that data, whether in space or time. Now, all of this might sound cool, and you're like, all right, Amit, I get it. They're like going to this like sky and stuff, and they're like, they have cool orbital sensors, but what's the business case here? Well, the business case here is that Palantir is creating a product for emerging markets, and Palantir is creating a product to really go into commercial sectors that a lot of other companies aren't in. I mean, there's not that many companies that are attacking other organizations or other B2B, methods that require this type of service. So for example, right, if you were to partner with an NGO, and an NGO gets a lot of money from grants, and that NGO specifically is based on stopping wildfires, meaning they like give aid to people that have wildfires. They work with organizations that are suffering from wildfires. They try to lobby politicians to stop, doing wildfire or like intentionally burning down trees. This is a lot of the stuff that's happening in Brazil and the Amazon rainforest. That's a world in which Palantir could partner with that organization or get that organization as a client to connect to existing satellites that exist to provide that data to that organization. Another thing is like FEMA, right? Or any type of organization or in a governmental body across the entire world that needs to make sense of hurricanes that are coming up, right? That needs to make sense of a tornado that's coming, any type of natural disaster relief. In order to do that, you need geospatial locations and imagery coming back to those organizations so they know what's actually going on. Another commercial example of a client is something like Starlink, right? I'm not saying Starlink would be the exact client, but a company that goes up into space and does stuff in space. So, I mean, a lot of this, you could just talk up to like T-Mobile, Verizon, right? Like the way our phones access 5G is there's got to be big towers and there's sensors in space that's bringing back that internet back to our phones. And it's just happening at exponentially rapid paces. That's the whole reason we went from 3G to 4G to LTE to 5G really within the matter of a couple of years. So Palantir could be working with those types of organizations and providing this type of service. Additionally, Palantir invested in a SPAC called Black Sky. I did a video on that. I'll leave that in the description. And Black Sky to me is Google Earth on steroids. It is literally capturing the craziest amounts of imagery across the entire world, and it's making sense of all that imagery, and it's bringing that back to Palantir. And Palantir's actual clients have ability to access that data. That's the whole nature of the partnership with Black Sky, so that they can have their business operations make more sense by using imagery coming from the sky and being able to have insights on what to do with that imagery. There's a lot of different use cases here, use cases that may make sense right now, that may not make sense right now, that are going to make sense 5-6 years from now. But I mean, there's not that many companies that are actually on the cutting edge of creating the complex software leveraging edge AI, machine learning, simulation models, IoT-enabled devices, and then a universal operating system that is not so technical that a regular person can't make sense of it, to actually create a cohesive all-in-one package to then sell to people with this Meta Constellation product. I mean, it's a hard thing to do, and it's really exciting to see that Palantir is quite literally trying to go to the moon. So thank you guys for watching. Looking forward to your comments. My name is Amit. I'll see you in the next one.